All right, hey guys, Sam back with you here, Wednesday, January 17th. We're mid-morning. Had a member interested in a look at ZenCash. So I've got it here. This is ZenCash to Bitcoin on Bittrex. If we take a look over here on CoinGecko. So ZenCash is an interesting project. We're at 51. I always tell you to look for 50 or higher. So we're over. We've got a market cap of 100 and almost 104 million. Interesting project. I mean, it's good numbers here. I'll let you do a little research if you're interested in what the coin is all about. We can see here almost all of the volume is on Bittrex, and it's to Bitcoin. So if we take a look here now, so here I've got the 4-hour ZenCash to Bitcoin on Bittrex. So when you first bring it up, and we've looked at this coin before, so the first thing you can look at, you could pretty quickly make the case that we've got pretty well established range here between these, all of this down here. So we've just got this range that we seem to be stuck in, and we're looks like maybe starting to push beyond that potentially. Here you can your eye will spot this here. You can see a 5-wave sequence here. And perhaps this is, this could be our A, B. We're going down for a C. This could be a 1, 2 to finish this count. We'll have to get in there and dig around a little bit and see if we can get a confirmation of what we see here technically to support a long position. So, given that we've just been pretty much range bound since it hit Bittrex, with the exception of of course, the initial pump and dump. So we have this long-established support and this pretty stiff resistance up here. So let's take a look here. Now we've done this coin before, so you could make the case that if I'm wicking off the absolute low, all right. So if I look that and wick that off, maybe this is a 1, 2, and now we're starting again. I mean, that's not unreasonable. It goes very deep. So if we were to look at that and say, well, if that's my 1, here's my 786. I mean, you could check the 88.7. That would be next in the in your fib sequence. That's 88.7, the square root of 786. So we even get a little bit through that. But I did notice this, right? So if you're first kind of trying to get a handle on if it's trading technically, well, this caught my attention. So you can see that's to the tick. So if I pull that off and say, okay, well, here was the push down. Here's a couple of ticks in front of the 618 right to the algo spot where they would sell it, and they take it right to target, and that's where we get the reaction. So that's a tell that we've got algo activity, that it's in, that it's technical. So how do we do coming out of this? If we're going to call that a 2. You could look at this and say, well, is there anything there? Well, maybe you've got some long-term targets up there. I might keep that, somewhere in my back pocket if I were looking at this just to check and see if we're going to get, this. It's too soon to make the case that failure to make the median line, implies weakness. But, then again, we don't make the median line and look at the sell-off here. But I think the median line trading rule number 4 is that a failure to make the median line implies weakness, and which will lead to a move equal to or greater than the move that failed. So that would suggest that we're going all the way back down here to this low, which is, again, we were in a range, and that would be all the way back to the support. So that's not an unreasonable position to take. But if you're looking for a way to get long here, knowing that you have been stuck in a range, I don't know that I would go there yet. I would start working from this low to see, do I have good technical trading here, knowing that I'm going to need to pull back to the 4-hour to get some perspective on it, and knowing that I'm going to run into some stiff resistance up here. So let's work from this as our low and see if we can establish a new trend here, if there's anything that we can learn. So I'm going to go to the 1-hour and then zoom in on that. So let me get this back so we can look at this. And this is not an easy count. It's a little tricky here. So you got to do some work on this one. So looking here, so the first thing you see, so if you just from a distance, you look at this where you see 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that doesn't work. So, you're wondering now, is this A, B, C? Do we have some sort of, is this a move down here? I've got an A, B, C, and then I fail here, so I've got a truncated fifth. That seems unlikely. I think there's probably a count here, but we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. So I'm going to blow in here and see if we can make some sense out of this first zone here. So you can see working from this low, we get a pretty stiff reaction from that. So that's the so that's the algo target. As you'll recall, as I just showed you, algos get their target down, damn near to the tick, and then boom, look at the reaction. So as I look at that, I think you could make the case that you have a 1-2. So if I look here, if this is my 1 wave and this is my 2 wave, if I pull this over, yeah, so I've got, here's 100% the length of this if this is my 1. So this would qualify as a 3. Here comes a deep 4. I don't overlap the 2, and then up we go for a 5, and then we retrace. So I think you could make a pretty strong case that you have a leading diagonal coming out of this low that would look something like this. So here's the 3, here's the 4, and we come up for a 5. So that plays, right? It's a sloppy diagonal, but it's technical. There's no invalidation point. So we could look at that and say, okay, well, let's see if we can get a handle on that. So let me pull back out and see how that looks. So that would imply then if we have a 1, so if we're working off of this as a 1-2, then this most likely here we've got 3, 4, then up we go for a 5. So let me change that degree, and we'll go up to minuet and see if that makes sense. Well, this is a contender here. So here's my 4, so I get a big spike in my 5. Does it make sense? Let's check it, right? So this is just the kind of the reverse engineering. If you're coming to this now, well, that's kind of interesting. So here's our 50. We don't overlap the 1, so we get an impulse, and you can see here. So this, you want to check the third here. Do we stay impulsive? So before we get to that, let's just dig in here, and this is again qualifying. Are we qualifying? So this is interesting to me here. So this overlap, so you can see here. So this would look to me like this is our 1. All right, so that's again, things like that are not random. You note how we drop right into the Vegas wave. So what I think we have here, so if I blow this up a little bit more, what I think I see there is an expanded flat. So here this would be within our third, this would be our 1. Excuse me. This would be, sorry guys, I got to take that off. So let's get that right. So I think what you see here, let me try and get back in context here. So I see this. Come on, let's get back out here so I can show. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now I think what you have here is 1. Then you get an A, B, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let me lower that degree, change the color. And does that make sense? Okay, so an expanded flat here. So A, here's the 1, 2, 3 of the expanded flat down for the 2. So thus the 4 doesn't overlap our 1. We get our big 3. Here's our A, B, C into our 4, and up we go. Well, yeah, it looks like we'd go over here, so essentially a double top. So there's our 5, and then we come down for the 4. So this is a little tricky here, but the 3 and then the spike and then coming back down with this as our 1, that plays, because otherwise we disqualify here as an impulsive wave in our third because we can't have a diagonal in our third. So I think that plays, and that this is, while unusual, an expanded flat is not uncommon. So if we look at that and we go, okay, well let's check if that's my 2. Well, that's certainly going to be a deep 4. So there's the 786. We've seen this thing go deep, and it's been a little sloppy, in the trading here, because we've traded this before. Now, interestingly, look what happens over here. But we wouldn't be using that pull. It's just kind of interesting how they relate as you move through the counts. Those are often revisited. So here's the 786 to hold the 4 in the Vegas wave, and then we pump up, and we get one last push up to get our 5th here. So let's look at that. Now, would that make sense? Again, we're kind of reverse engineering as we go here to qualify these pivots. Well, if that's my 3, 4, then I'm going to look at that and say, okay, well, let's check. If this is my 2 and that's my 3, here's my 4, here's the 50, up we go, here's the, and you can see within that we get, you can make the case here that this is your 4. So let's check that. So 1, 2, yeah, that could definitely play. So you might have either. See, this is a little choppy, so it's. I think I'll stick with this, and that would give us a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would do it. So we get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with an ending diagonal. All right. So again, I'm just kind of working through this on the fly. That looks like what we get here. So you say, well, wait a minute, overlap here. Well, that's right. So that would be an ending diagonal, only found in the C wave or the fifth wave. So despite the big spike, I can look at that and say, okay, well, this qualifies, because if I take the length of my 1, project it from my 2, I get more than 100%. So here's the 1272. So that plays. All right. So now we can look at that and say, okay, that's a clean 5-wave sequence that doesn't, it's a little tricky in here. I will grant you that. But we can complete a 5-wave sequence here that doesn't violate any Elliott rules. So if I look at that and go, okay, well, now let's anything else to give me confidence here. I did notice this, which is always a tell. So if I pull up from my 3 to my 4, if I get that right on that. Machine's a little slow today, a little slow. Got a lot open, so there we go. Come on, get on there. Get it right on. So you can see right up to the median line. I'd have to drill down and get that exactly on it, but it was a tick perfect wick of the median line from here. So here's your corner pocket. Takes a while, but gets all the way there. So just giving me more confluence and more to support the idea that I've got a fifth in here, that this is a completed structure with the pivot on the median line. So if I pull that off, then I'm kind of looking at this going, okay, I've got some sort of a 1 wave that's completed. So if I go to the larger degree, now I'm pulling from my absolute low here, this completes a 1 wave, and I'm putting in some sort of a 2 here. So you can make the case certainly that that's a 2, and then we're trying to get up and complete this in a 3, 4, 5. So we can leave that there. We'll go, excuse me, to a higher degree. We'll go intermediate. Okay, would that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so let's look here. So we're going to pull. We know a 2 can be anywhere from the 50 to the 786. So if I pull up on the assumption that that's a completed 1 wave, well, this it's a little sloppy here, right? So we get a punch through the 65. So if I were trading that, likely I'd have been stopped out right there. I wasn't, but I would have been a buyer here at the 618. I might have even started at the 65, although. Or pardon me, at the 50, so I would not have gone too far beyond the other side of the 65. So if I were trading that, I'd likely have taken a small loser there. So now we come out of that and say, well, does this still play? Do we potentially, is this an A, B, and we're putting in the C? It's possible given the length of time, but certainly it's not unreasonable to think that we're just putting in a 1, 2 of our third. So let's look. These would be much higher. So there's the algo target off of the pull. These are going to be much higher. So we look and go, okay, does that play? Yeah, so I've got to zoom in on this again, right? So again, this is, it's not glamorous. It's the work you have to do to try and get a handle on where you are. So you're validating your pulls. Well, does this work in here? Could this be a 5-wave? Could we have an impulsive wave here? Do we have a diagonal? I'm trying to support the idea that I've got a 1 wave here and I'm putting in a 2. Well, let's take a look here. So, excuse me, a few things I'm going to need to do. If that's 1, 2, 3, so this is likely 1, 2. Here would be my 3. Well, we could have. So that looks like that could be 3. So here's what I see now as I look at it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would play that as my 1 wave. 1, 2. Looks like we get 3, 4, and we complete with the 5. So let's lower that degree again. No, this is a bit tedious, but this is the work you have to do to try and qualify it. So I don't get an overlap here for the 4. So there's a clean 1. I get an A, B, C into my 2. Right, so I'm checking for technical confluence. Is it technical? If this is my 1, there's my 2, that's my 50. Here's my algo target, here's my negative 618. We get 2 back down, so let's look again, just as we would with any wave count. I'm going to pull from my 2 low up to my 3. Well, here's my 50. Again, it's been a little sloppy. Here's the zone you'd look for that fourth between 38 and the 50. despite the spike down, we hold the wave one high, so we don't invalidate. So I have a leading diagonal in the one wave. Do you see this? So this is a diagonal because we overlap the 1, 2, 3, 4. We overlap. So I get a leading diagonal into my 1, which is where you'd anticipate it. A nice ABC simple correction into my 2, and then I get a 1, 2, 3, 4 to complete my third. So I've got a wave within a wave. I've got good subdivision. Rip down for an ABC into my fourth, and then up I top on the 5. So, so again, going through and doing that work, yes, I can make the case here that I've got a 1 in play. So if that's a completed 1, then I'm trying to get into this. I'm trying to get into the third of the third. Do you see that? So if I pull back out, right? So here's my 1, 2. I've got a good 1 wave in. So let me lower that degree. So I've got a good 1 wave in. So from the larger degree, I'd be looking at this. Okay, so this potentially works as a 1. I'm putting in a 2. I'm trying to get up here into a 3, 4, 5 to complete my third. So let's change that. All right, so 1 is in, potentially. You make the case that the 1 is in. Let's change that degree so it makes sense. So there's my 1, 2. All right. Does that play? So let's pull this off because I know I'm working on the hypothesis that my 2 is in. So now I'm concerned about this 2. Is that technical? Does that play? Well, let's check it. So we're going to just go from my 2. If I've got a completed 1 wave, I'm just going to work from the low here up to my 1 high. Now, again, it's very similar. Remember, we saw the same thing here, and that's something that you'll often see in the market. When you see this kind of sloppy reaction at the 618, 65, and you'll often see it on the very next retracement. You'll see that same sloppy activity where you're getting pushes through, but there's no traction. It's just being tested. So looking at that, I would want to check this. I'm looking for more evidence. Can I get any market geometry on that to give me more support? Thinking, okay, maybe that's my 2. Well, if I'm just staying in original recipe, my 2, this whole thing could be invalidated. But I'm going to check my alternates. So let's see how we look with. If I look at that, that looks to me like a channel would be pretty close. So that kind of gets my attention. So, again, it's the same thing as a channel. If I drew a channel on this, right? So the modified shift and a channel, do you see that, are identical. So here's our median line, the center line of our channel. That plays as a 2. We know a 2 can be anywhere from the 50 to the 786. So we're a little sloppy around the 618, but we certainly get a nice tag of the median line here, or the center line of the channel, depending on what you've drawn there. So would that make sense? Yeah, I like that. So my third could be way up here. So this would be an attempt to get into the third of the third. Do you see that? So I could now, on the assumption that I've got a 2 low, I've got great risk reward here, because I could enter this right now, right here, with a stop below this low. So I'd be looking at risk reward that would be very, very favorable. So if I'm a buyer here right now, I got big upside targets here. I can play that tightly. There's the other side of that pivot. What do I get there? That's 9 to 1, and I'm just kind of eyeballing up here for third targets. If we're looking at a third target from an Elliott perspective relative to the length of that 1, oh, I got some juicy targets there. So if I pull out on that and we go, let's get this down here so we can get some perspective on where that could be going. And we look at the algo targets and we say, okay, is there risk reward here? So was all that work worth it? To look at this and go, okay, well, wait a minute, I could be setting up a trade here that has really substantial upside targets. So there's my 1, 2. Well, here's 100%, but here's my more likely target for my third, given the length of that 1, is way up here. So here's my 1618, 175 box. Right, that's the most probable target for a third if this is going to play as a 1, 2. So now, wait a minute. I got to look up here. Now what have I got? Now I got 16.78 to 1 if I'm a buyer right here. Is that risk reward? So, you tell me, is it worth doing that work to go through and qualify all of this and be sure that these pivots play and that it validates and we don't violate any Elliott rule set? Is it worth it? You got to make that call. It is to me. Right, so I think that's a beautiful trade setting up right there. This is I spent all day looking for that kind of trade. And it's worth it to me to do that work to qualify it. Because now I've got a 16.78 to 1 risk reward. Am I going to take that trade? I'm going to take that trade every time I find it. Every time. Because again, how many of these do you need to catch? Knowing full well that the majority of the time you are going to get stopped out. That's the reality. That's the bitch of it. Because you do all that and you think, okay, this is the one, and you get stopped out. Now you're like, this shit doesn't work. Right. So, and then you don't take it the next time, and you get stopped, or you do take it the next time, you get stopped out again. Now I'm sure this stuff doesn't work. Third time you find it, you set it up. You're like, you know what? I don't like it. I'm not taking it. This stuff doesn't work. That's the one that will go. That's just the perversion of the market. Your mistake is not pulling the trigger, is not doing the work, qualifying, and then not taking the trade. You have to take it every time to catch the one that runs. Again, it's an old analogy, right? But 3 out of 10. Are you going to make money? How many 16.78 to 1 trades do you need to hit to offset 7, 8 small losers like that? Not many. So, that's why this is hard to do, because you could get stopped out 7 times in a row, right? The 8th one is the one that'll go. It's a discipline. It's a commitment to this. So either you invest into this technical trading, and you commit to it, and you're going to continue to do it, or you're not, right? I mean, that's I guess the individual's choice, right? So I'm firmly committed because I've experienced it for 20 years. So there's no hesitation. If I see that, I don't care if I get stopped out, because if I find it again, I'm going to take it again and again and again, because I've just been compensated too well to stop doing it. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to qualify all of this, so even though it can be kind of a pain in the ass, because the average trader won't do it, right? And they won't catch that. They won't know that that's there. All right, wow, I went long on that one. Didn't mean to get on a rant, but that there's trading reality. Do the work, set up the trade, pull the trigger. Okay, guys.